Hello, and welcome back to Processing the Process, where we capture and discuss the technical, psychological, and contextual dynamics that shape the process of creating a work of art in both the performing arts and the business world. Week by week, we are following Anthony Mangone, owner of Trattoria 632 in Purchase, New York, as he navigates the internal struggles and external circumstances that impact the development of his restaurant business. Last week, we tracked the impact of the pandemic on Anthony and his restaurant through spring-summer 2021. This week, we'll conclude our exploration of the pandemic's effects with an examination of increased costs due to supply chain disruptions and a labor shortage. We'll then look at Anthony's other business ventures and the role that they play in his life. So it's now roughly end of May 2021, and you have been experiencing an unprecedented increase in the cost of food. Can you speak both specifically and more broadly about the impact of supply disruptions and the labor shortage with regard to your costs and ultimately your profits?
So the not only the restaurant industry, but industries across the board are experiencing supply chain issues. They're related to the pandemic. They're related to the shutdown of ports throughout the world. Mm-hmm. We had a problem with the Suez Canal back in the spring,
right,
which was carrying a lot of different products related to the restaurant industry and other industries. And as a result of not being able to meet the demand, there is significant lack of product. And what's also happening is, as in any other type of basic economics, supply and demand. The less supply, the higher the demand, prices go up. It's just economics 101. So we're seeing it in all stages: chicken, poultry, meat, pork, dairy, and produce. All products are up. I think at our last juncture, when we checked in, we compared to prices. Meat is up 14% on beef, 10% on pork, another 7% on poultry. That's not the only issue, though. The issue then becomes, where do you source the product if you don't have it? So it's certainly a price issue, which ultimately affects your bottom line. But I'll just give you an example: cannellini beans, which are an ingredient or a product in certain dishes that we hold. Can't find them. Cannot find them for the life of me. Called all of our different purveyors, they all don't have them. It sounds insignificant, but when you're trying to prepare your dishes and you have your kitchen your kitchen team telling you, we need this product, and we can't find it. A few weeks ago, it was heavy cream. Could not find heavy cream anywhere. Italian wines, which, right, as you may recall, my father is one of the salespeople. Mm-hmm. Most of his wines are stuck in port in Europe, and as a result, we can't get them. So, when you want to try and go according to your plan of consistency, it's difficult when someone comes in and says, "Hey, I really would love to have that Robusto that you had the last time. Can we get it?" And we say, "Yeah, we don't have it." And you want people to understand that the reasoning. You don't want them to think that, well, maybe they're just not able to fund the supply. You let them know that there's a supply chain issue. But ultimately, if the person really wanted that, it's disappointing on our side that we weren't able to satisfy them.
Can you give us, for comparison's sake, an idea of, you just gave us percentage increases for various categories. Can you compare that to what you would expect in an average year where this was not happening?
Well, we're here 11 years. I have never seen price increases to this extent. In fact, I could tell you that in many instances, most of these products are commodities, and if there's an overabundance of supply, the price drops. And that's where, if you are educated in the market as a restaurateur or any other industry for that matter, you will load up on that product when the prices are lower. It's easier to do with your wine and spirits because it's not perishable. But even on the meat side, on the beef and things of that nature, if you notice that the prices are dropping, you may increase your buy and maybe freeze some of it if possible, so that this way your costs on the plate is less than what it normally would be, and your profit margin is larger. To give a comparison, the answer would be specifically that the prices are up dramatically from 2019.
Right.
And there is no other analogy that I can give you except that price increase for purposes of our discussion. In the past, I've only seen prices drop at times because of the amount of supply on the market.
Wow.
So this is dramatic. And obviously, you mentioned it before, it does have an adverse effect on the bottom line.
So what do you do in your position as a restaurateur? You've shared with us your reluctance to pass along costs to the consumer, whether it was the cost related to the hit from the pandemic, or in this case, which is still a hit from the pandemic, but due to supply chain disruptions. That means it's coming out of your pocket ultimately. Is that correct?
That's correct. You don't want to be reactionary. I think that a lot of business owners at times become reactionary to the conditions of the market, and that sometimes will turn off customers and consumers. So we're trying to weather the storm right now, and try and find out where the market will eventually bottom out and get back to equilibrium. We're hoping that'll happen going into the new year. So for the immediate purposes, we will take a hit from a profit margin standpoint, but we don't want to give sticker shock or get into a situation where we're gouging people or people believe we're gouging based on the circumstances.
Which maybe is even more detrimental, is the perception of gouging than whether you actually are or not.
Undoubtedly.
Right?
Undoubtedly. And we're trying to sit there and say, look, we're okay, we're going to survive, we'll weather the storm. Some other businesses are just not in a position to do that. And so I don't look there to see and in any way be derogatory towards them. Their circumstances are what they are.
Right.
But we don't feel that we're in a position right now where we need to do that. And we're hoping that once things get back to status quo, again, consistency being our mantra, we'll play into it, and people will remember that we didn't sit there and raise the price of a dish $7 to coordinate with the market conditions.
Right.
And there are people that are doing it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But interesting segue then from your remark just before that some restaurateurs are just not in a position to take it on the chin, so to speak. And that reminds me immediately of you're being in a very fortunate position from that standpoint, and this leads us into our discussion of Anthony's other business ventures that he is involved in, that at least some of which produce income that you can then invest in the restaurant. So we've alluded to that before, but today we're going to really take a look at what those ventures are.
Sure, certainly.
So can we start with the hemp business?
Certainly. Yeah, I'm heavily involved in a full, farm to processing to product hemp business. I first started to study about the benefits of the hemp plant while I was away in prison.
Right.
Started to read every article about it. Saw the turn of where the country was headed in terms of the legalization on the THC side, the marijuana side, but really honed in on the medicinal benefits of the hemp plant and the different cannabinoids that are within the hemp plant and the byproducts that come out of it. As the studies get more deeper and deeper, we're learning about CBD, which is a byproduct of the plant, a cannabinoid, CBG and CBN, and all of these different byproducts that come out of the plant. We are working with a group. We were fortunate to work with a group out of northeastern Colorado and invest a large sum of money into a full service operation.
And I know you can hear the excitement in Anthony's voice as he speaks about this, but it's been rocky.
Yeah, well,
since the beginning. Can you give us a sense of what's been going on?
Again, I started to study this while I was away in 2016 and 17. When I came out in 2017, I started to again work with my now partners in finding opportunities and bringing them opportunities that I believed would be beneficial. So the market, again, a supply chain issue, supply and demand. In this particular instance, it's the inverse, right? So in 2019, there was a craze for the hemp plant because there was a farm bill passed which now stated from a federal perspective that the hemp plant, and I just have to do this for educational purposes, the hemp, there is a cannabis plant. The cannabis plant can produce THC, or the hemp plant, which produces less than 0.03% THC, which makes that plant legal.
Right.
That farm bill that passed in 2018 permitted farmers to now grow hemp legally. Up until that point, farmers were not permitted to grow hemp. It was considered a controlled substance.
Still, right.
Still under the old laws.
Right.
So as a result, they were able to now start growing hemp. They realized that the benefits, the economic benefit of growing hemp as opposed to maybe growing corn was dramatic, and everybody wanted to get involved in growing hemp. So there was a large amount of hemp grown in the 2019 season. As a result of there being so much of this commodity on the market, the price dropped dramatically. And we had an overabundance amount of hemp in the marketplace, and as a result, the price of a kilo of CBD, which is a byproduct of the hemp plant, went from $3,500 a kilo to $400 a kilo.
Wow.
So there was too much supply on the market.
Okay.
Again, fortunately, because our group is in a position from a financial standpoint to withstand a drop in the market conditions like that, coming out of this now, we're now poised, hopefully, that we will be one of the few people standing at the end that will have the ability to process hemp, CBD, and all the other byproducts that come out of the plant. But it was a rough go.
And am I correct that there's a second hemp operation in Florida?
So we recently worked with a group out of Florida. They are processing a new version, another byproduct of the hemp plant that we are currently working with. That company is in the process of going public. So we hope that within the second quarter of 2022, we will maybe be on the NASDAQ. Hopefully, we don't know if that's going to definitely happen or not, but that would be the hope that we would have our company merge with the Florida operation and eventually bring it to the market on the NASDAQ.
But again, as with Colorado, the Florida operation was also rocky.
It was
from
rocky.
What you described
They
to me.
did. They had a situation where there was someone internally who was playing, funny with the books, maybe embezzling some money, maybe not doing what they needed to do, and it was frustrating. But just circling back to this operation, I realized that every startup business is going to go through rocky times, and there are going to be people that in the beginning you may have thought were going to be a person that was going to be with you for a long term, and you just realize at some point in time they're just not right for the operation, and you move on. And that's one of the trials and tribulations of any small business.
So do you think, because of your experience and what you just described, that you know that these kinds of scenarios tend to be part of a startup operation, that you can take that proverbial step back and say, okay, I expect these bumps. And it's not going to destroy everything. I'm going to get through this. I mean, is your confidence greater?
I think in this particular example, we had done a lot of different due diligence, and we traveled across the country all the way to Oregon, met with different farm groups and agricultural groups. We eventually joint ventured with a large agricultural family in Northeast Colorado, and they checked a lot of boxes for us because they had shown they had a strong financial statement, and they had shown that they were, for all practical purposes, they were third generation agricultural family. They were very successful in different crops. They were the largest provider of David's sunflower seeds in terms of distribution, so they understood large-scale distribution. So on our side, they checked all the boxes from a due diligence perspective. Mm-hmm. Certainly, they could not have anticipated the drop in the commodity. Okay. And on the operations side, they ran into problems with processing the plant, meaning sending it through extraction machines and ultimately making a clean CBD isolate, which is what is necessary when you start making products and people ask for certificates of analysis on the product that you're providing. And so they dealt with those things, and it would be a fool's errand on our side to believe that this was going to work seamlessly, that you had to understand that there were going to be problems. I think those problems were probably a little bit more exaggerated as a result of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And right. Again, we started this in 2019. We harvested it in the fall of 2019, and then lo and behold, 2020, we start getting our lab up and running, and then the pandemic hits and everything gets shut down. So those are things that are certainly unanticipated, and it's frustrating. You want to get angry and you want to get upset and do some finger pointing, but from a logical, pragmatic standpoint, you have to be able to understand that every small business deals with these types of circumstances, and certainly nobody could have anticipated the pandemic. So as we now head into 2022, we're much more bullish about our position based on the assets that we were able to maintain control of, and the fact that we've joint ventured with yet this other group out of Florida, which we believe will eventually take us to a public market.
Now, the next venture I wanted to get into was your real estate financing business.
Yes.
But a question I have actually relates to both businesses and your background, which seems to me to be ideally suited to the analysis of potential new operations and the operations themselves, from your time in politics to law, business, your training, your experience. Am I right that that's really been a tremendous asset to you?
It has. I think the other asset is just, wanting to, having an entrepreneurial spirit and wanting to dip my finger in a lot of different cups to satisfy my interests in those areas. So, for instance, I had developed an extraordinary interest in the hemp industry and read everything known to man regarding it, and all of the different states that were legalizing on the THC side. There's tremendous growth potential in that industry. So, but what did I start with? I started with reading each state's legislation and understanding from that perspective, having spent a lot of time in the state legislature in New York, understanding what it took to bring that bill and ultimately get that bill approved. And you see the conditions of how they would administer licensing. It takes a lot to get that done, to understand all that, right?
Absolutely.
And if you are just a novice who wanted to get involved in this business, you'd have to go out and hire a lobbyist to go out and get you the license. You'd have to go out and hire an attorney to help you set up the company. We were able to do a lot of that internally as a result of my prior training and my partner's prior training. So we were fortunate in that perspective. And that also, on the real estate financing side, I'm fortunate to work with a group that goes out and they lend against real estate. And that was an area of mine that was a strong expertise that I had from my time practicing law. I represented a lot of real estate developers in terms of, and I understood, I did real estate development on my own with a group of partners and joint ventures. Mm-hmm. And I understood what was necessary from, underwriting from a bank, and that banks just don't lend money to anyone, that you have to put forth a product and a development plan that they are confident will be successful, because banks are not in the business to deal with foreclosures. And having had those experiences have now helped me in this perspective, so that when I sit with a prospective borrower who wants to borrow money for a real estate development project or for a automobile dealership, I'm able to understand exactly what they're looking for and what their limitations are, and how to overcome those limitations. Also, having from a legal background, I'm also able to realize how to be a little bit more of a creative imagination in terms of a lending perspective. A lot of times banks are extremely black and white. Yeah. They don't take into consideration certain intangibles. And it would frustrate me when I was on the legal side representing clients that they don't take that into consideration, and they can't because they have certain guidelines. We're on the private side, so it makes it a little bit easier for us to take into consideration certain intangibles of the prospective borrower and their ongoing operations.
Now, just as with the hemp operations, you have had your share of rocky roads.
Certainly.
With your financing business, even recently, I believe, right?
Look, you'll always have people that'll, again, but you also have to take into consideration exactly what went on.
I just need 1 second.
Just
Sorry.